All right, Deborah. How you doing today? Welcome to Permissionless. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. How's it going?
It's great. It's been really good to be here. The venue looks and feels great. I've met many interesting people, taken some meetings, attended some talks. Good vibes. It's all happening here in New York, and I'm glad people get to come down to see it.
So to kick things off, I'm familiar with YAP. I've worked with a lot of the team for quite a while, but want to dive into what you guys do and kind of your ethos as a PR company when it comes to public relations, comms, working with companies in the Web3 space. But to kick it off, would love to learn a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind. Tell us a bit about your background and maybe what got you excited about Web3. Everyone's got an interesting story. It's a non-traditional industry, so we all started somewhere and got here.
Yeah, so I learned about Bitcoin in 2018, but my journey really started in 2021. I think everyone was basically locked down and we were exploring the internet. And I came across this idea about how crypto can be used to facilitate creation of new countries. So, the network state ideas. And I think the idea that crypto can help reorganize the world is very fascinating because if you can have crypto, it's basically new money. With new money, you can create new economies. With new economies aligned towards certain value systems, you can create new countries. And I think the backdrop of that is that people have been frustrated with how the world is organized now. And so that got me thinking, man, this thing is interesting. I need to get into the space. And then I started working in the space, and I've been here ever since doing PR, helping projects tell their stories, be relevant, stay relevant, get out of crisis situations by talking to media or getting on conferences and speaking to the audiences. And right now I do that with YAP Global as an associate director and head of growth, and it's been a blast.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so tell me about maybe what the mission is behind YAP. I know a lot of other PR agencies. I know they all kind of have their own tweak on how they want to approach the space and who they work with and all this jazz. I'm curious, like what makes YAP tick underneath? Like what gets you guys excited? What drives you guys? Like what do you want to really be here in the space as a PR company?
So YAP Global was started by our founder Samantha Yap, and she was formerly a journalist, and so she gets that journalist mindset. And we're almost always talking to journalists, content creators like yourself. And what really has driven her is the need that we've seen to sort of translate this very complex ideas into language and stories that can make sense to a broad audience. And because we're all really big believers in the potential of crypto, we want as many people as possible to understand that. And many projects obviously are started by technical founders, and they don't necessarily have the ability early on to be able to tell stories that are compelling. And that's why we want to partner with really great names in the space and help them bring their vision to a big audience. And we've just loved doing that. I mean, YAP Global was started in 2018, and we've been growing from a couple of team members to now over 30, working with clients. And we're based in New York, London, Singapore, Cape Town. So just across the world, trying to help founders really make a difference in the space.
So I always have this like curiosity. In public relations, I'm sure there's all kinds of stories you have when you work with companies, but I mean, probably even more so with Web3 companies because this is such a crazy, wild, volatile space, which makes it incredibly exciting. But I imagine it can also create tons of headaches and problems and things that are probably more difficult to navigate. And I want to start off with crisis a little bit and kind of move towards like narrative shifting and building and story building. But how do you how do you guys navigate crisis? Because it happens all the time. Whether someone says something wrong online, or clients lose their money, or a project goes defunct, or there's some cataclysm in the space. When you have a client that's going through something that's really tough, do you guys have like a step by step process that you go through to approach it? Does it depend on the client and the situation? How do you guys handle those?
So we do have a playbook when it comes to dealing with crises. The one thing I would say at the outset, though, is we try to ensure at the very beginning that we properly vet the projects we work with. And we've been very fortunate to work with great projects. As you know, like the space is full with scams, but we've been fortunate that we've worked with really solid teams. However, sometimes there are just crises. Even good projects have crises. And so there is a playbook we follow. One thing that's really important that we feel we can provide great support to our clients with is they're in the middle of a crisis, and all they see is the crisis, whereas we're on the outside and we see everything else as well. So while they may be stuck in the situation which seems like the end of the world, we're like, actually, this is probably going to last for about 2 or 3 days, and we're there to be like their balancer and to be a bit more neutral in the situation. But we always start with observing what actually is the sentiment out there. You're seeing a lot of tweets complaining about this crisis, but how many followers does this person who posted actually have? How much engagement is it actually getting? Is it affecting your token price or is it not? So we're there to calibrate the situation. And one thing that happens in a crisis is that people lose trust in your word. And so when there's no longer trust for what you have to say, you need to start leveraging the trust that other people have, which is why we immediately rope in our journalist contacts, editors, who we can say, like, hey, you're seeing this. We actually have a different story to tell, and we'd love for you to connect with our client to actually talk about it. And so then a different message can be shared through these platforms, through these third parties, to actually correct what has happened. And often these crises are misunderstandings, and sometimes they're not. And then you need to communicate what the project is doing to fix it, so that the narrative can change.
Do a lot of these tend to happen just with clients that you already have underneath your belt, or is it people that have a crisis and then come to you guys and say, please, please help us fix this?
Yeah, we've helped. We've gotten requests to be onboarded when projects face these crises, but I would say the vast majority of the situations are when our existing clients face crisis themselves.
So when you have a client, you bring them on. Obviously, this space is very heavy and clunky, and there's so much terminology and technology, and it's really hard to, in a world of short attention spans, get a user or someone in your community or a potential client of theirs or someone that might be buying a product or service or just a user in someone's ecosystem to understand and participate. And when they're talking about this technology or this MEV or this L2 or like we're great at scaling, we're great at that, and the end user has probably heard it a billion times, it probably falls lost on them a little bit. I imagine it's hard when they want to be very educational, but maybe they need to be a little bit more entertaining, or maybe they need to be a little bit more better in the way that they convey their messaging. How do you help a company, especially in the space, structure a narrative so that it's not so maybe boring in terms of just talking about the technical aspect, but making it something that's very digestible and consumable?
The first thing we do is put on our journalist cap and think, if this project were to talk about this in this certain way to a journalist, would they resonate? Would their eyes glaze over? And so we're constantly trying to simplify some of these concepts, because I think when founders are or builders are so deep in their work, their day to day, and they're talking to builders themselves all the time, they think that everyone else cares about these details. So we're there to actually look at all the details and pull out the most interesting stuff and then really double down on those. And so we're there because we're deep in the space and we understand the technology very well, but we're also really close with media, with content creators, so we know what they care about. So by merging our deep understanding and what interests media, we're able to pull out the most interesting bits and say like, hey, client X, this is what you should focus on. The second thing, besides putting on the journalist hat, is just paying attention to what is relevant at the time. So what are you doing right now that is really resonating now? So like, why now? Why are you doing this right now? And answering that question. So for example, like stable coins is a huge thing. So if you are building some kind of infrastructure or you're launching your own stable coin right now, or you're partnering with a stable coin partner, this is actually a good time to double down and talk about those things a bit more. Or, regulation is changing a lot, so if you have some kind of expertise or interest to comment on that, this is a good time as well. So connecting what you're doing to the trends of the day also helps you really stand out in a crowd of projects that are just going on and on about what they're doing without any kind of differentiation.
Other than crisis management, other than building out narratives and stories for brands, what other things does YAP do for clients? Managing comms, you guys working with socials and content, or like what else kind of do you offer that also separates you guys?
So one of the things that we really love doing and we've been doing consistently is being partners of conferences. So we work with conferences like ETH Denver, ETHCC, Solana Crossroads, Missouri Mainnet, and we cut across the whole world because we want to be really close to the communities. But what that enables us to do is basically at these conferences we invite journalists, content creators to come and write about or publish content about the conference. What that gives us is the ability to be very close to media and introduce our clients to them. And so what we offer our clients is, on ground interviews, podcast recordings, whoop whoop, raise the roof, because of these close connections that we have. We also help put our clients on stages, so we apply for them for speaker slots. And because of these close relationships with conferences, this is also something that we can help with. One thing in particular that I'd love to touch on is founder mode comms. As you know, like this whole founder mode thing blew up last year, talking about the importance of the founder telling his or her story with credibility and like not outsourcing the storytelling aspect of his or her role. And so we work with founders to also figure out what it is they really want to say and doing it consistently and doing it confidently. I think when you're maybe a bit more in the weeds building technology, you may not have figured out that element of how can we tell a story in a way that resonates with a wide audience. And it's not easy to become a good storyteller, I don't think. It's just a skill that needs to be picked up. And so we spend time with founders to actually craft that story and then train them, like, how do you actually speak? How do you deliver this? How do you bring in anecdotes that are interesting that will keep an audience captivated? So founder mode comms is really one of those things that we are focused on helping our clients with.
It's kind of like falls on this idea of like founder-led leadership. Like if you're not steering the ship and then no one knows who's steering the ship and it's like, what direction are we going? It's like you have a community of people that's like rocking back and forth and like has no destination in mind. And it's hard in the space because a lot of founders are so into the tech and they dive so deep into it and they probably are just naturally very bad at it and it's something they need to learn. But do you also kind of help them kind of learn some of those skills so they can engage with their community better, be more transparent about everything that's going on? And then what does that kind of look like? Is that, posting more on a website and doing blogs? Is that getting on X and engaging? Or what would you suggest is like important to do?
So the first thing we do is there's the one-off effort and then there's the recurring effort. So the one-off that we do is media training. So it's basically going back to the basics of what kind of content is actually interesting and how do you frame what you're doing in a way that is newsworthy or relevant. So we share with them what are the top news values that you should pay attention to, such as if you're telling stories that have big numbers or there's a kind of like controversy around it or there's a potential for big impact around it or it's really relevant right now, like these are some of the characteristics of what makes a good story. And we just start with the basics. Because if you're just going to go on about this is what we built for the infrastructure, this is the integrations, like, yes, it's important when you're working with other builders, but when you're trying to reach the end user, when you're trying to reach institutions, potential partners, potential investors, they don't really maybe care as much about the intricacies of stuff. So we start with the basics. So I'd really encourage founders to just go back to news values. Just Google the 7 news values, and you'll realize like these are the elements that matters in your storytelling. And then it's just practicing. I mean, how many of us hate to hear a recording of our voice speaking? Exactly, but now you have to do it day on day. And so I think it really, I think, just comes down to the discipline of preparing your scripts, actually testing it out loud, either with like a PR partner like us or your marketing team, and getting feedback on how you're speaking, and then just elevating little by little across time. I think the third thing I would say is making sure you actually have core messages, 2 or 3 core messages that you're making sure you include in every engagement, whether it's a podcast interview like this or whether it's being on stage, making sure that you firstly crystallize what you actually want to say and say that consistently in different mediums across time. And then you'll be remembered, because we remember things that we are familiar with and that is repeated to us. And so I think just knowing that and actually implementing that is a core part of what we just talk to these founders about all the time.
So what brings you to Permissionless? Do you have clients on the ground here? Are you guys operating, doing anything, or are you scoping out the scene? What's the plan?
Well, I'm based in New York City, so I definitely had to come to this. I've never been to Permissionless before, so this is my first. So, checking out what are the big trends that people are talking about. Also, meeting my clients, saying hello, connecting, supporting them with interviews that are happening on ground. I've had clients who've spoken on stage as well. So just being there, taking photos, just supporting them in this journey, helping them to create content that can be posted online. Also, because I'm head of growth at YAP, I'm also looking for any potential projects that is interested to be supported with PR, and seeing what they're helping them figure out the PR strategies, and if there's a way that we can support them, getting into conversation with them. So I've had like some really productive conversations, and it's been a blast.
Is there anything that you took out of Permissionless? Like, do you see any talks or panels, or like, are there any themes or topics that you thought were fascinating that maybe you came across that you didn't know as much of prior, or that you were kind of limited in your knowledge, and you're just like, oh wow, that's really cool. Like with stable coins or decentralized AI, like there's been a lot of stuff floating around here.
Yeah, I think 2 themes have stood out. Firstly, obviously we're in the USA, and just the conversations around how projects are continuing to turn their attention towards this market, because things are developing very rapidly. So with Genius Act that is passed, the conversation is now shifted to what next? What other policies are going to come about? And people are excited about what is to come, because I guess the US kind of sets a lot of standards for the rest of the world. And so if things happen here first, there's going to be a domino effect in the rest of the world. So I think that kind of excitement about what's happening in this market. But also the other element that has been discussed a little is the kind of institutional interest, and how there is more and more openness on the institutional side to participate in this space, which I think is pretty exciting. So those 2 have stood out to me.
Excellent. If there's anyone watching this that might want to be a client of YAP, that might want to get some help in some of these areas, where would they go to reach out and get in contact with you guys?
So check out yapglobal.com. That's YAP global.com. And there's a contact form. So fill it out and let us know what kind of PR needs or comms needs you may have. Feel free to look me up as well on X. I'm Debra Nita 28 on X. Would love to chat and learn more. The space is evolving really quickly, and there are many different projects who are trying to shout their stories out. So make sure you don't get left behind in the storytelling.
Debra, I appreciate you taking the time today. This has been wonderful. I love this side of the space as well because I interact with a lot of you guys, and I think that it's really important for these companies to grow and learn how to do it properly and engage their communities and build out the right narratives, understand how to navigate stressful situations. So I think you guys are a real key part of that stuff, and love working with you guys too because you keep me fed and you, you constantly send me amazing people to talk to. So keep up the great work. I've followed YAP for a long time. I know you guys are growing fast. So keep it up. Watching you guys.
Thanks so much. And we love working with you, and we hope to continue working with you. And yeah, thank you for this.